Here's how to make a futuristic Yeat type beat completely from scratch in the style of his 2093 album. Let's change our tempo to 140 beats per minute. These type of beats are usually 120 BPM to 160 BPM depending on the style. Now let's add our melody in. We're going to start with a synth and lay down some power chords in a minor scale. Let's use the key F minor, which we can adjust up here in scale highlighting, and add our power chords in. A power chord simply uses the root note and the note 5 notes above it in the scale. This is called the perfect fifth. Now let's add our top line in. Let's try to use notes that are one semitone apart, as these add tension and give the melody a dark mood to it. Now this is sounding super dry, so let's add some effects. I've added a fruity reverb too, and a gross beat which uses the reverse preset. Now let's export this by right clicking up here and going to render as audio clip. Then we can drag this into the playlist and chop out the section that we wish to use. I also decided to pitch this down 3 semitones, which means that we're now in the key of D minor rather than F minor. And let's assign this to a mixer track and add some more distortion and reverb. Now let's add some more layers. I've used 6 more layers here, so I'm going to try to break these down as quickly as possible. Let's start with a brass layer that follows the bass notes of the chords. Remember, we pitched the melody down 3 semitones, so these bass notes will be 3 notes lower. Then let's add a very simple top line lead. A distorted bass preset that follows the root notes of the chords again. A distorted lead playing the root D. And finally 2 arpeggiator presets that play the exact same chord progression we came up with at the beginning. Remember, this is pitched down 3 notes. Now let's drag this pattern into the playlist below our original melody. Let's now double click and drag up here, go to File, Export and Wave File to render this as an audio clip. Now let's drag this audio clip into the playlist. I then pitched this down a further 2 semitones, so we're now in the key of C minor. For all of these melodic sounds, you'll notice that I'm adding a lot of distortion plugins. This is so important for these style of beats as they sound super thick and aggressive. Here's how this melody sounds all together. So now let's add our drums and our bass line in. We'll start with the 808. These beats use all different styles of 808s. I'm going to use the spins, but choose whichever sound you wish to. Now let's copy and paste the root notes from our chords into the 808. Remember, we'll need to pitch these down a further 2 semitones, or notes, as we pitch the melody down to. And let's now create a unique bounce with how we place these notes. You'll notice there's some gaps in the patterns. I've cloned the 808 here and added notes in a separate playlist. I then assigned the cloned 808 to a mixer track where I've added distortion. This allows me to emphasize certain notes in the pattern. I then also added this bass one shot, which plays in the other gap. Here's how this 808 pattern sounds. Remember to add a soft clipper on the master to give these beats a distorted sound. This means that any of the volume over the threshold will clip and sound distorted. Now let's add our snare. I've added some distortion and also a small amount of reverb. These snares will always hit on the 3rd and 7th beat. Here you can see that I've also added accent snares and rolls to add bounce and rhythm. After the snare, we're going to add a 2-step hi-hat pattern with a few rolls and lower notes. I've also added the delay preset to this, which makes the hats sound wider. Finally, we just need some hats and rides. This sample plays on every other beat. And this sample plays on the 6th beat. Finally, I exported the entire track without the 808s, and then dragged this loop into the intro. I then right clicked up here on the tempo and selected create automation clip, and dragged down the tempo for the beginning of the track to slowly build this into the drop. I also added an EQ which had a low pass filter. I then right clicked on the frequency for this and selected create automation clip. I could then do the same with this, where I built this up so that the low pass filter opened up towards the drop. The reason I did this is because Yeat's beats usually contain cool intros. I felt that this fit the style quite well. I then simply structured the drums so that we had a small gap during the intro, and also cut the drums out of certain parts of the beat to add emphasis. Here's how the final track sounds altogether.